Who had their hands on you?
The marble floor was cold beneath Chantel's bare feet. She'd lost her heels somewhere between the taxi and the front door. Or maybe at the club, she couldn't remember. Everything felt soft around the edges, warm and spinning. The soju had burned going down, but her classmates kept refilling her glass, kept laughing, and kept pulling her onto the dance floor. She'd wanted to forget. Just for one night. The Kang mansion loomed around her in shadows, all sharp corners and expensive silence. She fumbled for the light switch, giggling at her own clumsiness when a voice cut through the darkness. Who had their hands on you? Chantel's heart stopped. She knew that voice. Low, controlled, deadly calm, the kind of calm that preceded storms. Her eyes adjusted to find him. Dae-Hyun sat in the leather armchair by the window, perfectly still, a crystal glass of whiskey catching moonlight in his hand. He wore black slacks and a white dress shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. His tie was gone. His dark hair, usually perfectly styled, fell slightly across his forehead. He looked like sin wrapped in silk. "Mr. Kang," she breathed, suddenly very aware of her smudged lipstick, her wrinkled dress, the way her skin still felt hot from dancing. "I didn't know you were." "Answer the question." Each word was precise, measured. His eyes tracked over her, the torn strap of her dress, the mark on her collarbone that might have been from a necklace or might have been from something else. This wasn't the first time he'd asked. 3 months of this dance, 3 months of stolen glances and almost touches, 3 months of him watching her come and go with that same dangerous question in his eyes. But tonight felt different. Shantel tried to laugh it off, crossing her arms over her chest. "Just friends, sir. Classmates. We were celebrating. I didn't ask who they were." He stood then, unfolding to his full height, and she remembered why people called him the Black Wolf. There was something predatory in the way he moved, all leashed power and controlled menace. "I asked who touched you." The room tilted. Or maybe that was just the alcohol. "Why do you care?" The words escaped before she could stop them, bold and reckless. Something flickered in his expression, something raw and hungry that made her breath catch. His phone lit up on the side table. Once, twice, 3 times. He glanced at it, jaw tightening. When he looked back at her, his eyes had gone completely cold. "Go to bed, Shantel. We'll discuss this in the morning." But she saw his phone screen before turning away. Surveillance photos. Her in the club, a man's hand on her waist. Her head was thrown back in laughter. Someone was always watching. She just hadn't realized it was him. Before we continue with what happens next, drop a like if you're hooked, and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? Because trust me, you won't believe what Shantel discovers about the man who's been protecting her, and the shocking reason why he can never let her go. 11 months earlier, Shantel Okoye arrived in Seoul with 1 suitcase, $300, and a heart full of ghosts. The scholarship letter had felt like divine intervention, a graduate exchange program in international business, full tuition, modest stipend, escape. That's what it really was. Escape from the debt collectors who'd stripped her mother's house bare. Escape from her ex-fiancé who disappeared the moment the money ran out. Escape from relatives who'd suddenly forgotten her phone number. Her mother's medical bills had devoured everything. The house, the car, every piece of jewelry. Even the engagement ring had gone to pay for one more round of chemotherapy that hadn't worked. At 26, Shantel was starting over in a country where she couldn't read the signs or speak the language. Seoul University's orientation was a blur of faces until one girl, petite, designer clothes, perfect English, sat beside her. "You look terrified," the girl said, smiling. "First time in Korea?" "First time anywhere, really." Chantel's laugh was shaky. "I'm Min-jae Kang, and you're coming to dinner at my house tonight. No arguments." That's how Shantel met the family who would change everything. The Kang estate sat behind tall walls in Gangnam, all modern architecture and carefully manicured gardens. Min-jae chattered the whole drive, but Shantel barely heard her, too overwhelmed by the wealth on display. "My father's old-fashioned about family dinners," Min-jae explained as they entered. "But he's actually really kind. Just formal." The dining room could have seated 20. Only 3 places were set. Kang Dae-Hyun entered exactly at 7. Chantel's first thought was that he looked too young to have a 24-year-old daughter. 42, Min Jae had mentioned, but he moved like a man in his 30s. Tall, broad-shouldered, with silver threading through his black hair. His suit probably cost more than Chantel's entire education. His eyes, though, cold. Assessing. The eyes of a man who saw everything and revealed nothing. Father, this is Shantel Okoye. She's in my program from Nigeria. Miss Okoye. He inclined his head slightly, a gesture that felt more dismissive than welcoming. I trust my daughter isn't bothering you with her enthusiasm. His English was perfect, accent barely noticeable. Not at all, sir. She's been very kind. Throughout dinner, Chantel felt his gaze return to her again and again. Not leering. Something else, studying. Like she was a puzzle he was trying to solve. Min Jae dominated the conversation, talking about classes and professors. Chantel learned that Chairman Kang owned a vast import-export business. Legitimate on paper. But the way Min Jae carefully avoided certain topics, the way security personnel lingered just out of sight, Chantel wasn't naive. She'd grown up in Lagos. She recognized power when she saw it. You're very quiet, Miss Okoye, Dae-Hyun said as dessert was served. Is the food not to your liking? It's wonderful. I'm just overwhelmed by your generosity, sir. Min Jae is fond of collecting strays. His tone was neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. I hope you won't take advantage of her kindness. The words stung, but Chantel kept her face composed. I would never. We'll see. After that first dinner, Min Jae insisted Chantel move into one of the estate's guest houses. You're paying way too much for that tiny apartment. We have the space. Father won't mind. Except he did mind. Chantel could feel it in the way his jaw tightened when Min Jae announced the arrangement. But he said nothing, just watched Chantel with those cold, calculating eyes. The first few months passed in a blur. Classes, studying, navigating a new culture. Min Jae became the sister Chantel had never had, teaching her Korean phrases, taking her shopping, including her in every part of her life. And Dae-Hyun remained a distant, formal presence. They crossed paths at dinner, in hallways. Once, late at night in the kitchen when both couldn't sleep, he'd said nothing, just made tea and left a second cup beside her before disappearing back upstairs. Small things revealed themselves slowly. The way he listened when she spoke, even while pretending not to. The way his eyes tracked her movements across a room. The way he always knew where she was, even when he shouldn't. Chantel told herself it was security protocols. The Kang family was wealthy, powerful. Of course they monitored everyone in the house. But sometimes, late at night, she felt the weight of his attention like a physical touch. She learned other things too. Whispered conversations that ended when she entered rooms. The men in dark suits who came and went at odd hours. The way certain names made Min Jae's expression shudder. Chairman Kang by day, respected businessman, philanthropist, pillar of Seoul society. The Black Wolf by night, a name spoken in hushed tones, associated with territory and power and violence that stayed just out of sight. Chantel knew she should be afraid. Instead, she felt safer than she had in years. 6 months before that night. The charity gala was a different world, one of crystal chandeliers and champagne towers, where every dress cost more than Chantel's previous life. Min Jae had insisted on lending her a gown. Midnight blue silk that hugged curves, Chantel usually hid under oversized sweaters. You look gorgeous, Min Jae had squealed, clasping a diamond necklace around her neck. Father's gonna have a heart attack. Chantel hadn't understood what she meant. Not then. The ballroom of the Grand Hyatt Seoul glittered with Seoul's elite. Chantel recognized faces from news broadcasts, tech moguls, entertainment executives, politicians, and threading through them all, Kang Dae-Hyun in a black tuxedo that made him look like he'd stepped out of a dangerous dream. He glanced at her once, when they arrived. Just once. His expression hadn't changed, but something dark had flashed in his eyes before he turned away to greet an assemblyman. Chantel! Min Jae pulled her toward a group of young businessmen. This is Takeshi Yamamoto. His family does tech imports. Takeshi, my best friend from Nigeria. Takeshi was handsome, charming, and immediately attentive. When he asked her to dance, Min Jae practically shoved her onto the floor. Your Korean is improving, Takeshi said as they swayed to the orchestra. Min Jae is a patient teacher. And you live with the Kang family? You must be very close to Chairman Kang's daughter. Something in his tone made Chantel's instincts prickle. The question felt like fishing. But she smiled politely. Min-jae saved my life when I arrived. I'm very grateful. She didn't see Dae-Hyun watching from across the room, whiskey glass frozen halfway to his lips. Didn't see his jaw tighten when Takeshi's hand settled at the small of her back. Didn't see him excuse himself from his conversation with barely concealed abruptness. But she felt it. The weight of his attention is like a brand. After 2 more dances, Shantel excused herself. The opulence was suffocating. All these people with their easy wealth, their careless laughter. She slipped through the French doors onto a balcony overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline. The night air was cool against her heated skin. She gripped the railing, suddenly overwhelmed. 6 months in Seoul, and she still felt like an imposter. Like someone would realize she didn't belong and send her back to the ruins of her old life. Your mother would be proud. Shantel spun. Dae-Hyun stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. Mr. Kang? I'm sorry, I needed air. Don't apologize. He moved to stand beside her, maintaining careful distance. These events are performative, exhausting. They stood in silence. Seoul sprawled beneath them, alive with light and possibility. How did you know? Chantel's voice cracked. About my mother? Min-jae talks about you. She doesn't know I listen. Fresh tears burned her eyes. She tried to blink them away, but one escaped, trailing down her cheek. Without a word, Dae-Hyun produced a silk handkerchief. But instead of handing it to her, he did something that stopped her heart. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his thumb caught the tear, brushing it away with devastating gentleness. The touch lasted 3 seconds, maybe 4. It rewrote everything. Shantel couldn't breathe. His hand lingered near her face, and she saw something raw in his expression: hunger, longing, restraint stretched to breaking point. Shantel! His voice was rough, unfamiliar. Chairman Kang! A voice from inside. The auction is starting. They separated like they'd been burned. Dae-Hyun's mask slammed back into place. He straightened his cuffs, not looking at her. You should return to Min-jae. The formal tone was back, but his hands trembled slightly. The balcony isn't safe alone. He walked away without another word. Shantel touched her cheek where his thumb had been. Her skin still tingled. The next morning, Min-jae mentioned over breakfast that Takeshi Yamamoto's import deal had fallen through. Father said there were complications with quality standards. Weird, right? Takeshi seemed so confident. Chantel's coffee cup paused halfway to her lips. 2 days later, she accidentally discovered the security room. The door had been left open, screens flickering with feeds from throughout the estate, including her guest house. The security guard quickly closed the door, apologetic, but not before Shantel saw the logs. Months of them. Footage reviewed, timestamps noted. Someone had been watching. Not just security protocols. Someone had been watching her. That night, Dae-Hyun found her in the library. They were alone for the first time since the gala. The cameras, she said without preamble. How long? He could have lied, denied it. Instead, he met her eyes with brutal honesty. Since the first night you stayed here? Why? Because I need to know you're safe. He moved closer, and she realized he was done pretending. Because I can't stop thinking about you. Because I'm 42 years old, and I'm losing my mind over my daughter's best friend. The confession hung between them like a lit fuse. This is wrong, Shantel whispered. I know. Min-jae would. I know. You're dangerous. Yes. He stopped an arm's length away, close enough that she could feel his heat. I'm dangerous, Shantel. I've done things that would horrify you. I'll do worse to anyone who threatens what's mine. And you? His voice dropped to something almost broken. You should run. But Shantel didn't run. She closed the distance between them. 3 months of playing with fire. The first rule was simple. Never in the house when Min-jae was home. The second rule, never let anyone see. They broke both rules constantly. 2 a.m., the kitchen. Shantel couldn't sleep. Exam stress, maybe, or the way her skin felt too tight whenever Dae-Hyun was near. She padded downstairs in pajama shorts and an oversized t-shirt, seeking tea in silence. He was already there. Dark slacks, white undershirt, hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. He looked up from the kettle, and something hungry flashed across his face before he controlled it. Can't sleep either. Her voice came out breathier than intended. Your light was on. I saw from my window, which meant he'd been watching. Again. They made tea in a charged silence. When they both reached for the honey, their hands collided. Electricity shot up Chantel's arm. Neither pulled away. "This is insane," she whispered. "Tell me to stop." His thumb traced circles on her wrist. "Tell me you don't feel this." She couldn't, because she felt it everywhere, in her racing pulse, her shortened breath, the way her body leaned toward his like a compass finding north. "In Korean," he said softly, "when something haunts you, there's a phrase. Nareo goerofinda. It means you torture me." His eyes burned into hers. "You torture me, Shantel, every day." "Good," she breathed. "You've been torturing me for months." He pulled away then, jaw tight. "Go to bed. Before I do something we'll both regret." But she saw his hands shake as he poured his tea. Min Jae's birthday, the study. The house overflowed with Min Jae's university friends. Music thumped through the walls. Shantel had been dancing with classmates, laughing, trying desperately to feel normal. Then she'd seen him. Dae-Hyun stood in the doorway to his study, watching her dance with Junho from her economics class. His knuckles were white around his whiskey glass. The look on his face was pure, controlled violence. When she excused herself to the bathroom, she detoured to his study instead. He was at his desk, tie loosened, fury radiating off him in waves. "You're gonna break that glass," Shantel said softly, closing the door. "He touched you." The words came out flat, lethal. "His hands on your waist, your hips. You were laughing." "He's a friend, just dancing." "I don't care." Dae-Hyun stood abruptly. "I don't care that it's irrational. I don't care that I have no right. I saw another man's hands on you, and I wanted to break every finger." Shantel should have been afraid. Instead, heat pooled low in her belly. "Then do something about it." He crossed the room in 3 strides, backed her against the door. His hands framed her face, thumbs stroking her cheekbones. "If I start," his voice's gravel and smoke, "I won't stop." "Good," his phone rang, sharp, insistent. The ringtone he'd once told Min Jae meant emergency only. The spell broke. He stepped back, answered in rapid Korean. His expression shifted from desire to cold calculation. "Territory dispute," he said after hanging up. "I have to go." But before he left, he pressed one burning kiss to her forehead. "We're not done." Shantel was coming home from the library when 3 men cornered her on the subway platform. Drunk, aggressive, their Korean too fast for her to understand. But intent was universal. One grabbed her arm. She shoved him off, heart hammering. Another blocked her path. A security guard intervened, but not before one of them had ripped her sleeve, left bruises on her wrist. She told no one. Not even Min Jae. But the next morning, all 3 men were in the hospital. Broken ribs, shattered hands. No memory of who'd attacked them. Shantel found Dae-Hyun in his office. He looked up from paperwork, expression mild. "You can't do this," she said, shaking. "You can't hurt people because of me. I can do anything when it comes to you." He said it like a simple fact. "Those men put their hands on you. They're lucky to be alive." "This is crazy. You're a monster?" He stood slowly. "Yes, I am. I've always been. But I'm your monster now, Shantel, and anything that threatens you." He smiled, and it was terrifying. "I make disappear." She should have run. Should have packed her bags that night. Instead, she walked around his desk and kissed him like she was drowning. The complications. Min Jae started watching them with speculative eyes. "You and father are weird lately," she said one afternoon. "Good weird. He's been lighter." Guilt twisted Shantel's stomach. Meanwhile, Dae-Hyun's associates began whispering. The chairman was distracted, making unusual decisions. There were rumors of a marriage alliance with the Park family, traditional, strategic, appropriate. And Shantel's visa renewal came with complications. Questions about her living arrangements, her relationship with the Kang family. Marry someone, Min Jae joked, setting her up on blind dates. Problem solved. Each date felt like betrayal, but Shantel went, because what else could she do? Until the night she came home drunk, smelling like another man's cologne. Until Dae-Hyun asked his question. Until everything finally exploded. Present night, 2:47 a.m. Shantel's head was spinning, but not just from the soju anymore. Dae-Hyun's phone lay between them on the coffee table, surveillance photos glowing in the darkness. Frame by frame, her night unwound. Junho's hand on her waist. Her head was thrown back, laughing. Sungmin's arm around her shoulders, dancing too close, smiling too wide. 7 times. Dae-Hyun's voice was surgical precision wrapped in ice. 7 different men touched you tonight. I counted. You're insane. But her voice shook. You had people following me? I always have people following you. He stood, prowling toward her like the wolf they called him. Do you think I'd let you walk through Seoul unprotected? Do you know how many threats I've eliminated in the last 6 months? I went out to forget you. The words exploded from her, alcohol dissolving her filters. I went out because being in this house is torture. Because I see you every day and can't touch you. Because I'm in love with a man who watches me through cameras but won't. She stopped. The confession hung in the air like gun smoke. Dae-Hyun went completely still. What did you say? Tears burned her eyes. I'm in love with you. There. Are you happy? I'm pathetic and stupid and in love with my best friend's father. A man who, he kissed her. Not gently, not carefully. He kissed her like a man who'd been starving and finally found sustenance. His hands fisted in her hair, angling her head. She tasted whiskey in desperation and something that felt like coming home. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard. Since the first dinner. His forehead pressed against hers. I've been in love with you since you sat at my table in that oversized sweater, trying so hard to be brave. You were terrified and broken and still so much light. I took one look at you and knew I was damned. Dae-Hyun, I'm not a good man, Shantel. He cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. I've killed for less than a look at you. Those men on the subway? I didn't just hurt them. I made sure they'd never forget what happens when you touch what's mine. The businessman at the gala, his entire company crumbled because he danced with you. She should have been horrified. Every rational cell in her body screamed danger, but all she felt was cherished, protected, claimed. How many? She whispered. Threats, dozens. Most you'll never know about. Men who looked at you too long, a professor who made an inappropriate comment, the landlord from your old apartment who tried to contact you. His thumb traced her jaw. I've burned my empire to the ground protecting you from the shadows. That's insane. Yes. No apology in his voice. I'm obsessed with you, completely, and it's only getting worse. Chantel's hands fisted in his shirt. I should be afraid of you. You should be. His lips brushed her temple. I can arrange your flight back to Nigeria tonight. Get you away from this. From me. You'd be safe. And if I don't want to be safe, then you need to understand what you're choosing. He pulled back, making her see him clearly. My world is violence and blood. I have enemies who would use you to destroy me. Loving me puts a target on your back. I'm not going anywhere. The words were barely out before he was kissing her again. Deeper this time. His hands mapped her curves like he was memorizing territory. She gasped into his mouth, and he swallowed the sound. My room, he breathed against her lips. Now. He lifted her effortlessly, her legs wrapping around his waist. They moved through the darkened house, every step heavy with inevitability. His bedroom was all dark wood and expensive simplicity. He set her down beside the bed, hands trembling slightly as they found the zipper of her dress. Last chance, he said hoarsely. After this, you're mine. Completely. I won't be able to let you go. Good, she pulled him down to her. I don't want you to. What happened next rewrote them both. Every touch was a promise. Every kiss is a claim. He worshipped her body like she was something sacred, and she discovered that the most dangerous man in Seoul was achingly gentle when it mattered. Afterward, she lay in his arms, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow. I love you, he said into her hair. I'll burn the world for you. I know. She kissed his collarbone. I love you too. A sound from the hallway, soft footsteps. They both froze. Min-jae's bedroom was next door. They heard her door open. Pause. The floorboards creaked as she walked past Dae-Hyun's room, stopped outside his door. Chantel's heart hammered so loud she was sure Min-jae could hear it. Long seconds passed. Then Min-jae's footsteps retreated. Her door closed softly. She knows, Shantel whispered, panic rising. Dae-Hyun's arms tightened around her. Then we deal with it. Together. But Shantel heard the tension in his voice. Everything was about to change. 3 weeks later, Shantel had never known happiness could be stolen in such small moments. 3 a.m. phone calls in Yoruba while Dae-Hyun listened to the rhythm of her mother tongue. His office door locked during the day. She perched on his desk while he taught her the legitimate side of his business empire. The way he'd brush past her in hallways, his hand finding hers for one brief squeeze. Come to Paris with me next month. He'd whispered 2 nights ago, "I have business. We could have 3 days. Just us." She'd kissed him instead of answering, which he'd taken as yes. The future felt possible. Terrifying, complicated, but possible. Then everything shattered. It started with a manila envelope delivered to Dae-Hyun's office. Shantel was there, reviewing export contracts he'd asked her opinion on. His expression went from warm to apocalyptic in seconds. Photos. Dozens of them. Her and Dae-Hyun kissing in the underground parking garage. His hand in her hair, her body pressed against his car. The note was simple: surrender the Gangnam territory by Friday, or everyone sees what the Black Wolf keeps in his bed. Who? Shantel started. Lee Dong-min, rival families, was dead. He's been trying to take Gangnam for years. So give it to him. It's not that simple. He looked at her with something like anguish. If I show weakness, if they know they can manipulate me through you, they'll never stop coming. Every enemy I've made will see you as leverage. Then what do we do? His silence was answer enough. That night, Min-jae brought associates for dinner. Business discussion. Shantel usually ate separately during these meetings, but Min-jae had insisted she join. Dae-Hyun barely looked at her when she entered. The meal was tense, talk of territory disputes, of leadership questions. One associate, a sharp-eyed man named Mr. Kim, kept glancing between Dae-Hyun and Shantel. "Chairman Kang," Kim said carefully, "there are rumors about distractions. Some say you've become soft." "Soft?" Dae-Hyun's voice could have frozen blood. "The girl," Kim nodded at Shantel. "Your daughter's charity case. People talk about your unusual interest in her well-being." Shantel's heart stopped. Dae-Hyun leaned back, his face a mask of cold disdain. When he looked at Shantel, there was nothing in his eyes. Nothing at all. "Miss Okoye is my daughter's project. An obligation. Nothing more." The words were knives. "She lives here out of my daughter's misplaced generosity," he continued, voice clinical. "But perhaps it's time we discussed more appropriate arrangements. The girl's presence has become inconvenient." Shantel couldn't breathe. She knew what he was doing. I knew it was protection, but the words still destroyed her. "Perhaps she should return to Nigeria," Dae-Hyun said, not looking at her, "before she becomes more of a burden than she already is." Min-jae gasped. "Father." Shantel stood on shaking legs. "Excuse me." She made it to her room before the tears came, great, gasping sobs that tore through her chest. He was protecting her. She knew that, but knowing didn't stop the agony of hearing him call her a burden, an inconvenience, nothing. A knock. Soft. Min-jae entered, closing the door behind her. "Shantel, I'm fine. He's right. You're in love with him. Not a question." Chantel's head snapped up. "What? And he's in love with you." Min-jae sat beside her. "I've known for months, since before you two knew, probably." Fresh tears spilled. "Min-jae, I'm sorry. I never meant you saved my life, and I betrayed you." "Stop." Min-jae grabbed her hands. "You didn't betray anyone. You think I haven't seen how he looks at you? How do you look at him? I've never seen my father happy before you. But he just protect you." Min-jae's expression was grim. Something's happened. Something bad enough that he's willing to destroy you to save you. Before Shantel could respond, Dae-Hyun's head of security knocked urgently. "Miss Shantel, there's been a development." The message was simple, brutal. Lee Dong-min's people had located Shantel's father in Lagos. One word from Lee, and he was dead. "He wants Gangnam and proof you've left Korea," the security chief explained. "Both by Friday." 3 days. Shantel booked her flight that night. Didn't tell Dae-Hyun. What could she say? That she was leaving to save her father? To save him? He'd try to stop her, and more people would die. She'd arrived in Seoul with one suitcase and nothing to lose. She'd leave the same way, even if it meant leaving her heart behind. Thursday, 36 hours until flight. Min-jae found her father in his study at 3 a.m., staring at a glass of whiskey he hadn't touched. She didn't knock, just walked in and slammed a folder on his desk. "You're a coward." Dae-Hyun's eyes snapped to hers. "Excuse me?" "You heard me." Min-jae crossed her arms, the great black wolf terrified of his own heart. "You don't understand." "I understand everything. The blackmail, Lee Dong-min's threats, the fact that you publicly humiliated the woman you love to protect her." She leaned forward. "What I don't understand is why you're letting him win. He has people in Lagos. Shantel's father is already safe." Min-jae opened the folder. "I had him extracted 2 days ago. He's in a secure facility in Abuja. Shantel doesn't know yet. Dae-Hyun stared at his daughter like he'd never seen her before. You think I'd let that bastard threaten our family? Min-jae's smile was sharp. I'm your daughter, father. I learned from the best. Min-jae, I've known about you and Shantel for months. I've watched you fall in love. I've watched her make you human again. Her voice softened. You control an empire but can't fight for the woman you love? Dae-Hyun's hand trembled as he reached for the whiskey. If I fight, she becomes a permanent target. She's already a target. The moment you fell in love with her, she was marked. The only question is whether you let fear win or you do what you do best, crush anyone who threatens what's yours. Min-jae pulled out her phone, showing him a flight confirmation. She booked this yesterday. Leaves tomorrow at 6 p.m. She's running to save you, you idiot. Something cracked in Dae-Hyun's expression. No. Yes. So stop wallowing and fight. Min-jae spread documents across his desk. I've been gathering intel on Lee Dong-min for 3 months. He's not just blackmailing you. He's running illegal organ trafficking through his hospitals. Has been for years. Dae-Hyun scanned the documents, his tactical mind already racing. The Park family hates him. So do the Chois and the Yoon family. He's made enemies everywhere. Min-jae tapped the papers. Form an alliance. Use this evidence to bury him. Then go legitimate. Expand your legal operations. Phase out the underground business. That would take years. Cost me half my empire. So? Min-jae's eyes flashed. You've built kingdoms, father. Now build a life. One where you can love Shantel openly, where you stop being the black wolf and start being just a man. The silence stretched. Then Dae-Hyun reached for his phone. Get me Park Jin-woo and Choi Sung-ho. Tell them it's urgent. Min-jae smiled. Already done. They're waiting in the conference room. Meanwhile, Shantel's room. Shantel folded her clothes with shaking hands. One suitcase, just like before. Full circle. The goodbye letter to Min-jae sat on her desk, ink smudged from tears. She couldn't write one to Dae-Hyun. What could she say? Thank you for loving me enough to let me go? Sorry I wasn't worth fighting for? A knock, then Min-jae burst in without waiting. You're not leaving. I have to. Your father's safe. I had him extracted. Min-jae grabbed Shantel's hands. And my father is downstairs right now, forming an alliance to destroy Lee Dong-min. He's fighting for you. Shantel's knees went weak. What? He loves you, you idiot. He's just been too scared to risk you. But I knocked some sense into him. Min-jae pulled her toward the door. Come on. I can't. If people die because of me, people die in his world anyway. That's the reality. But you? Min-jae's expression was fierce. You're the reason he wants to stop being a monster. You're the reason he wants to live, not just survive. Through the study window, Shantel could see Dae-Hyun in the conference room. 4 other men in suits. Maps and documents spread across the table. His face was animated, alive, commanding. He's choosing you, Min-jae whispered, even if it costs him everything. The question is, are you brave enough to let him? 24 hours later, the plan in motion. Dae-Hyun stood in his tactical center, screens showing operations across Seoul. Park, Choi, and Yoon family forces moving into position. Police units coordinated through contacts he'd cultivated for decades. Lee Dong-min's main operations? He asked his security chief. 3 locations, hospital, warehouse, and his personal estate. Teams in position. Dae-Hyun checked his watch. 4:27 p.m. Shantel's flight was in 90 minutes. She didn't know he knew. Didn't know her father was safe. Didn't know that in the next hour, her world would either explode or transform. He'd sent her a simple text an hour ago. Trust me. Please. No response. Sir, his tech specialist called out. We've confirmed Lee has a man at Incheon Airport. Former military. He's tracking Miss Okoye. Dae-Hyun's blood went cold. Send everyone. Now. But the operations, I don't care. His voice was steel. Nothing matters if she dies. Send everyone to that airport. He was already running for his car. Choose power or love? There was no choice. There never had been. Cheon Airport, 5:43. Shantel moved through the terminal like a ghost. Check-in had been mechanical. Security, a blur. Now she sat at her gate, boarding pass trembling in her hands. Her phone buzzed. Dae-Hyun's text. Trust me. Please. She'd stared at it for 10 minutes. Trust him to what? Let her go? Forget her. Flight KE-507 to Lagos now boarding zone 1. Shantel stood. This was it. Then she saw him. A man in a dark jacket following too closely. His eyes tracked her with professional precision. When their gazes met, he smiled. Not friendly, predatory. Lee Dong-min's final play. Her heart hammered. The bathroom. She could hide, call security. Shantel veered toward the restrooms, walking fast. The man followed. Inside the bathroom, she locked herself in a stall, fumbling for her phone. Her hands shook so badly she nearly dropped it. The bathroom door opened, heavy footsteps. Miss Okoye. His voice was casual, almost friendly. Let's make this easy. Come with me quietly, and your father lives. Chantel's mind raced. Min Jae had taught her basic self-defense during their late-night talks. Father's world is dangerous, she'd said. You should know how to protect yourself. She unlocked the stall, came out slowly, hands raised. The man relaxed slightly. Mistake. Chantel drove her knee into his groin, exactly like Min Jae had shown her. As he doubled over, she slammed her elbow into his face. Blood spurted from his nose. He was bigger, trained, but she had fury and desperation. She grabbed his arm, twisted, heard something crack. Airport security burst in, weapons drawn. Down! Everyone down. The assassin lunged for Shantel one last time. A security officer tackled him. Other officers swarmed. Shantel collapsed against the sink, shaking violently. Then Dae-Hyun was there. She didn't know how. I didn't care. He shoved past security, past protocols, and pulled her into his arms. I've got you, he breathed into her hair. You're safe? I've got you. My father is safe? Min Jae extracted him days ago. He pulled back, cupping her face. It's over. Lee Dong-min's operations are being raided right now. Evidence delivered to prosecutors. His blackmail material was destroyed. You're safe. But everyone will know. I don't care who sees. His voice was fierce. I don't care who knows. I love you. Let them all know. The terminal had gone quiet. Dozens of people watched them, security, travelers, airport staff. Phones were out, recording. Shantel saw their future in that moment. The scandal, the gossip, the judgment. I'm not leaving, she said. Good. He kissed her. Not gentle, not careful, claiming her in front of everyone. Because I'm never letting you go. Camera flashes exploded around them. 6 hours later, the video went viral within minutes. Chairman Kang's airport kiss. Korean social media exploded. But the narrative wasn't what Lee Dong-min had wanted. The simultaneous news of his arrest for organ trafficking, the evidence of his blackmail schemes, the coordinated operation by 4 major families. Suddenly, Dae-Hyun wasn't a scandal. He was a man who'd fought for love. Chairman Kang choosing his heart over power, read one headline. The Black Wolf's transformation, from crime lord to legitimate businessman, analyzed another. Love and Seoul, how one woman changed everything. The public ate it up. Here was a powerful man, vulnerable, wealthy beyond measure, but risking everything for a foreign graduate student. It was romantic, compelling, human. Within 24 hours, the Park, Choi, and Yoon families publicly backed Dae-Hyun's transition to legitimate business. Lee Dong-min's empire crumbled. His associates turned on him, eager to distance themselves. In Dae-Hyun's study, Shantel watched the news coverage in disbelief. They're calling you a romantic hero. I'm not a hero. He pulled her into his lap. I'm just a man who found something worth more than power. What happens now? Now? He kissed her temple. I legitimize my business, expand the legal operations, probably lose half my empire in the process, and I build a life with you, if you'll have me. That's it? That's everything. His arms tightened around her. I've spent 20 years building kingdoms. Now I want to build a home. Min Jae appeared in the doorway, grinning. Father, you're trending. #1 on Naver. The comments are actually sweet. Dae-Hyun groaned. Shantel laughed. For the first time in months, the mansion felt like home. 3 months later, March. Shantel woke to the smell of fried rice and the sound of something sizzling in a pan. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming. Then she heard Dae-Hyun cursing softly in Korean from the kitchen, and she smiled into her pillow. She found him at the stove, dress shirt rolled to his elbows, hair endearingly disheveled, consulting a recipe on his tablet with intense concentration. A platter of golden fried chicken sat cooling on the counter. The fried rice looked surprisingly professional, dotted with shrimp and vegetables. You're cooking Nigerian food, she said from the doorway. He looked up, and the softness in his eyes still made her breath catch. Your defenses today. I wanted you to have a taste of home. 3 months of this. 3 months of waking up in his arms, of stolen kisses in hallways they no longer had to hide, of learning that the most dangerous man in Seoul made terrible jokes and sang off-key in the shower and looked at her like she'd hung every star. "How's the rice?" She peered into the pan. "Honestly, I have no idea. Your father said the shrimp needed to be added last, but wait, my father helped you?" Dae-Hyun's smile was almost shy. "I called him this morning, wanted to get it right." Her father had arrived in Seoul 6 weeks ago. The reconciliation had been tearful, complicated, beautiful. He'd settled into a small apartment in Gangnam, was learning Korean, had even started teaching Yoruba at a cultural center, and he'd accepted Dae-Hyun. Warily at first, then with growing respect as he saw how his daughter was loved. "Still jealous when men look at you," Dae-Hyun murmured, pulling her close. "Professor Kim was very friendly at your presentation last week." "Good." She kissed his jaw. "Stay jealous. Always." His arms tightened. "How are you feeling about today?" Her thesis defense, the culmination of 18 months of work. Nervous, ready, grateful. She was graduating top of her class, already had 3 job offers from legitimate corporations who'd heard about her work on international business ethics, but the offer she'd accepted was closer to home. "Morning." Min Jae breezed in, followed by a handsome man in glasses. "This is Dr. Park Jae-won. He's consulting on father's medical supply expansion." The way Min Jae's eyes lit up when she looked at him told Shantel everything. Her best friend had found her own happiness. Found a sister, kept a father. Min Jae had whispered to her last week. "Best decision I ever made was forcing you two to stop being idiots." They ate breakfast together. The fried rice was perfect, the chicken crispy and seasoned exactly right. Her father arrived, bringing her grandmother's earrings for luck. Dae-Hyun's business partners sent flowers. After breakfast, Dae-Hyun pulled Shantel into his study. "I have a proposal." He spread architectural plans across his desk. A community center in Itaewon, business training for immigrants and refugees, cultural exchange programs. "I want you to run it." Chantel's hands trembled as she traced the blueprints. "Dae-Hyun, I've spent 20 years taking from this city. Let me give something back. With you." He turned her to face him. "Also, there's this." The ring was simple, a single diamond on a platinum band. Not ostentatious, but perfect. "Marry me," he said. "Properly, a traditional Korean ceremony, then a Nigerian one. Let me stand in front of both our worlds and claim you as mine." "Yes." She was crying and laughing. "Yes, always yes." That evening, after she'd successfully defended her thesis to thunderous applause, they gathered for dinner. Her father, Min Jae and Jae-won, Dae-Hyun's closest associates. A family built not from blood alone, but from choice and love and second chances. Dae-Hyun stood raising his glass. "To Shantel, who came to Seoul with 1 suitcase and conquered the most stubborn man in Korea." "To Shantel," everyone echoed. She looked around the table, at her father finally smiling again. At Min Jae, her sister in all but blood. At Dae-Hyun, the man who'd fought his demons to build a life worth living. "I came to Korea with nothing," she said softly. "I found everything." Dae-Hyun's hand found hers under the table, squeezed gently. "Who knew," she whispered to him, "that the scariest man in Seoul would be my safest place?" "Who knew," he murmured back, "that a woman with 1 suitcase would be my salvation?" Outside, Seoul glittered with possibility. Inside, a family laughed around a dinner table. And 2 people who'd found each other in the darkness finally stepped fully into the light. Together.